Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Hey, it's a new format. This is episode 101 of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. It's a new format. So if you missed the show yesterday, which was the last live show, then you missed the special announcement about the new format and the fact that it's no longer going to be a live show. So it's going to be recorded live, meaning that, you know, if I wind up saying, or acting like an idiot for a second, I'm keeping that in there. So it will be, you know, it will have the feeling of being a live show, but it's not actually going to be broadcast live at any specific day or time. Of course, there are going to still be internet affiliates that carry the show, FPRN and LRN being two of those. I'm still in talks with a couple of other outlets that had been carrying the live show to see if they want to carry the recorded show. But anyway, it's going to, you know, instead of being a once-a-week show, it's going to wind up being a several-time-a-week show. Not yet 5 days, although that is ultimately going to wind up being my goal, is to do a 5-day per week, Monday through Friday, 30-minute podcast. For starters, I'm going to wind up doing 3 shows a week. So I'm planning on doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, have the show out by mid-afternoon. So today's show should be up by about 2:30, 3 o'clock at the latest. And you can expect that, you know, unless things come up, unless, you know, it's one of those instances where I have to go to court for either myself or someone else and, you know, things get delayed. You can plan on the show being out by mid-afternoon, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The Wednesday show, I am going to wind up introducing an AMA. So you can ask me anything, literally anything. I don't care what it is. I will answer all questions, even if it's an answer of I'm not going to give you an answer. Every question that gets submitted as either a response to me on Twitter, where I have posted a status of every Wednesday is going to be an AMA. You can ask your questions by responding to this, or you can email ama@fpp.cc or ama@fppradio.com. Either one of those email addresses will work. You can reply on Twitter. The Twitter handle is @Darryl W. Perry. There's also the option of responding on Facebook if you're one of my personal Facebook friends, or to the Peace, Love, Liberty Radio Facebook page. There's going to be a post every week soliciting questions for the Wednesday AMA. There's also going to be a post on the Free Press Publications Facebook page and on the FPP Radio Facebook page. So I know there's 3 different Facebook pages you can follow. There's slightly different things that get posted on the Peace, Love, Liberty page and the FPP Radio page, and things that get posted on the Free Press Publications page that don't get posted on either of those 2. So 3 different Facebook pages, a Twitter, or if you are my personal Facebook friend, you can respond with your questions to me directly on Facebook on that post that I'll put out. I'll try to put it out every Monday. That way it gives people, you know, at least 2 days to wind up asking the questions. And again, 30-minute show, so not as much time to wind up talking about random things, but I do plan on bringing up some interesting topics. And one of the things that I found earlier today is actually from FEE, which is the Foundation for Economic Education, and it's titled 5 Economic Myths That Just Won't Die. Oh, and one more thing before I get into the article. When I was doing the live show, I would send out the links to what I was discussing as I pulled up the topic, or sometimes it might be a segment or two after because I would forget to actually hit send using Hootsuite. So instead of doing it that way, because obviously it's not live, but I still want people to, be able to find the articles that I was discussing, I'm actually going to wind up putting them in the show description. So if you go to fppradio.com, click the drop down for shows, Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, and then there's the embedded players. Click on one of the two players. It will pop up with either the SoundCloud or the Spreaker in a different window, and then you can find the show notes there. I also try to always get those posted on the Facebook page. That way, again, so people can actually see the things and be able to, if they want to, read the article without my commentary. So let's delve into this article from Fee. It's 5 economic myths that just won't die. Most people get their economic information through internet memes and hit pieces filled with nonsense. A common theme is that the forceful hand of government is all that is needed to make things right. For example, everyone knows, and they have quotes around knows, everyone knows that government laws ended child labor and the New Deal ended the Great Depression. But are these actually valid claims? Here are 5 such myths that too many people just accept as true. Myth number 1. The idea that economic growth helps the poor is trickle-down economics. It doesn't actually help them. In a 2001 paper titled Growth is Good for the Poor, economists Art Cray and David Dollar of the World Bank found that when average income rises, the average income of the poorest fifth of society rises proportionately. So let me just sort of break that down a little bit, because the way they have this sentence written is it doesn't exactly make sense at first glance. But when, let's just say in the U.S., the average income rises, meaning that you take all incomes that everybody in the country makes, divide by the number of people working, that's your average. So when that goes up, let's just say that last year it was $50,000. And I'm just pulling that number, for the sake of having easy numbers. So last year was 50,000. This year it's 51,000. Then that means the average went up by 1,000. When that happens, the income levels for the people in the bottom 20% also goes up. They say this result held across regions, periods, income levels, and growth rates. In 2013, more than a decade after the original paper, Cray and Dollar explored the relationship between economic growth and poverty again. Using data from 118 countries over 4 decades, they came to the same conclusion. According to The Economist, quote, "This evidence confirms the central importance of economic growth for poverty reduction. Institutions and policies that promote economic growth in general will on average raise incomes of the poorest equiproportionality, thereby promoting shared prosperity. There are almost no cases in which growth is significant pro-poor or pro-rich." Meaning that, even though there might still be some income inequality, because you're always going to have a top 20% and a bottom 20%, when the top 20% increases and the average increases, the bottom 20% also increases. And that's based on data from 118 countries over 4 decades. So based on what they're saying, you don't see something to where the top 20% increases, the average increases, the middle 20%, and then the bottom 20% winds up decreasing. So we'll come back, and yes, I know it's a 30-minute show, but I'm still, for the sake of my sanity and also, to add a little bit to the pocketbook and help sort of offset the cost of my time, there are going to be commercial breaks. So when we come back, I'll finish with the rest of the 5 myths that just won't die.
Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Opening a wallet is quick and easy, and for merchants, there are no transaction fees on the first $1 million worth of transactions. I trust Coinbase. You should too. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. Hi, I'm Darryl W. Perry, and I need your help to take Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on the road. In the spirit of Motorhome Diaries and Liberty on Tour, I intend to take the message of peace, love, and liberty on the road. I intend to leave New Hampshire at the conclusion of the New Hampshire Liberty Forum and return at the beginning of Porkfest. During the 104-day trip, I'll be visiting at least 10 cities across the country, speaking to people about the ideas of peace, love, and liberty, while continuing to produce daily Liberty media. Pensacola, Florida, Austin, Texas, Sedona, Arizona, and Denver, Colorado are already on the map. If you have a college group, a local Liberty on the Rocks, or other Liberty meetup that you'd like me to visit, you can possibly add your event to my calendar. To find out more about the tour or to donate, visit tour.fppradio.com. That's tour.fppradio.com.
Hey, welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. I'll get back to that story from Fee in just a second. But first, I want to make sure that I tell you about Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. For over 35 years, since 1977, Roberts & Roberts Brokerage has been a trusted source for buying and selling your investment-grade precious metals. They now take Bitcoin for purchasing precious metals, so you can turn your profits into a long-term, stable investment. Call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on investing. 800-874-9760. That's 800-874-9760. So, myth number 2 on the list here from Fee of the top 5 economic myths that just won't die. Free trade doesn't lead to better economic outcomes in the real world. Paul Krugman once said, "If there is an economist's creed, it would surely contain the affirmations, I understand the principles of comparative advantage, and I advocate free trade." However, critics of free trade, such as development economist Ha-Joon Chang, have made very odd statements, such as this one. There is a respectable historical case for tariff protection for industries that are not yet profitable. By contrast, free trade works well in the fantasy theoretical world of perfection competition. Comments like these are puzzling because proponents of free trade don't assume that there is, or rather, they don't assume that there is perfect competition. They simply recognize that if one country can produce a product at a lower opportunity cost than another, trade between the countries or individuals is mutually beneficial. This is known as the theory of comparative advantage. Economists have examined countless times whether or not free trade leads to greater economic growth. In regard to trade liberalization, reform that lowers barriers to international trade, the evidence consistently shows that such reforms improve economic performance over time. According to one study that examined 141 trade liberalizations and compared economic performance before and after liberalization, after controlling for confounding factors, quote, per capita growth of countries after liberalization was some 1.5 percentage points higher than before, and investment rates were 1.5 to 2 percentage points higher. Now, some people have accused me of being anti-free trade because I've said in the past that the U.S. should withdraw from NAFTA, CAFTA, GATT, and the World Trade Organization, the WTO. But the reason that I say that the U.S. should withdraw from those things is because those treaties aren't actually about free trade. It's about the illusion of free trade and leading people to believe that there is free trade. But those documents are hundreds of pages long each. In one case, I forget which one it is, but one of them is several thousand pages long. You don't need a document that long to allow for free trade. You don't need a document that long to say that there shall be no barriers to trade, because that's what free trade is. Free trade means there are no barriers. It is free. But that's not what is actually in practice. There's a little bit more written up here by Fee, but let's go on to myth number 3. Myth number 3 is that the government ended child labor. In a free market, child labor would still exist. The assertion that government laws and regulations ended child labor is endlessly repeated and often used as quote-unquote proof that without such laws, child labor would be pervasive in the market economy. The Economic History Association has shown that this is not the case. Writing, most economic historians conclude that child labor legislation was not the primary reason for the reduction and virtual elimination of child labor between 1880 and 1940. Instead, they point out the industrialization and economic growth brought rising incomes, which allowed parents the luxury of keeping their children out of the workforce. According to the National Bureau of Economic Research, while bans against child labor are a common policy tool, there is very little empirical evidence validating their effectiveness. Not only is there little evidence supporting the effectiveness of these laws, there is evidence that such laws actually make the families they are intended to help worse off. Research on child labor bans in India found that along various margins of household expenditures, consumption, calorie intake, and asset holdings, households are worse off after the child labor ban. Now, there are exemptions in pretty much every child labor law that I have seen for people running family farms, meaning that if you own a family farm, then it's perfectly legal for you to use your child as labor to pick the corn or plant the tomatoes or pick the tomatoes or tend to the crops, feed the cows, etc. But yet it's illegal in pretty much every case for that same child that's helping you on the farm, that's working with heavy machinery on the farm in a lot of cases, to then go down to the grocery store, apply for a job, and then bag groceries or run a cash register. And it seems to me that there's something completely wrong with that scenario, to where a child is perfectly competent and able to work on a farm, but not competent enough or able-bodied enough to work a cash register or bag groceries. So to say that laws have eradicated child labor is, on the one hand, it's both false, because we know that it hasn't. There are still children that do labor. But it also, as pointed out here, it winds up hurting the people that it is supposedly meant to protect. Myth number 4. Countries like Sweden and Denmark prove that high taxes don't harm economic growth. Saying that high taxation does not harm economic growth because its effects aren't superficially visible in one country or a few is like saying that cigarettes don't harm an individual's health because many young and healthy people smoke them and there are no immediately clear detrimental effects. Many factors affect economic growth. In order to see how high taxes affect growth, researchers control for confounding variables and use large national and international data sets. We'll come back with the rest of the write-up on Myth 4 as well as Myth number 5 on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Hi, I'm Darryl W. Perry, and I need your help to take Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on the road. In the spirit of Motorhome Diaries and Liberty on Tour, I intend to take the message of peace, love, and liberty on the road. I intend to leave New Hampshire at the conclusion of the New Hampshire Liberty Forum and return at the beginning of PorcFest. During the 104-day trip, I'll be visiting at least 10 cities across the country, speaking to people about the ideas of peace, love, and liberty, while continuing to produce daily Liberty media. Pensacola, Florida, Austin, Texas, Sedona, Arizona, and Denver, Colorado are already on the map. If you have a college group, a local Liberty on the Rocks, or other Liberty meetup that you'd like me to visit, you can possibly add your event to my calendar. To find out more about the tour or to donate, visit tour.fppradio.com. That's tour.fppradio.com. The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So you might be wondering, because I didn't really explain this in the first segment, and I'll get back to the article here from Fee in just a second, but you might be wondering why I would wind up changing from a live show to a live recorded show that instead of, doing once a week, why are you now doing it 3 times a week, possibly 5 in the future? Well, I'll tell you, there's a very good, simple explanation, and it's because in March, I plan to take the show on the road. There's the Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on the Road tour, where I'm going to be traveling across the country, plan to stop in at least 10 cities for several days. So, anywhere between like 3 to 7 days in each of 10 cities across the country. And then there will probably wind up being, shorter stops in a couple of places. But the tour it's going to be similar to how Motorhome Diaries was in the past or Liberty on Tour in the past, to where I'll travel around. I've got this thing that I call a not a bus. It looks like a bus. It's not a bus. It's being converted into an RV. So I'm going to take that around the country and talk to different Liberty groups, find out what's going on in various places across the country, and, wind up hopefully trying to get them to migrate to New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project, because, it's great that people are doing things in Pensacola and Denver and Austin, Texas, and Phoenix and other places around the country, but it would be even better if those people that are, in some ways successful where they are, came with other people that are being successful all in one place, and then they could, have ultimately at some point in their lifetime, hopefully have that government that they want, to where the maximum role is the protection of life, liberty, and property. And I know some people want even less government than that, and that's great. Let's all work together, and hopefully at some point in my lifetime there will be voluntary association, true voluntary association, where you don't have some entity calling itself the state of New Hampshire that says you have to give us money. You don't have some entity called the United States of America that says you have to give us money. You don't have the People's Republic of California demanding money and telling people what to do and how to live. So that's what I'm hoping for the future. And the tour, it's not just going to be trying to get people to move to New Hampshire. Obviously, that's going to be part of it. But like I said, I want to see what other people are doing, and I want to help spread the ideas of liberty, because there are people that won't necessarily listen to their friends, but they might listen to somebody else, because that's generally how it is. I'm sure if when I was in high school or college, if one of my friends would have said something about libertarian stuff, I would have been like, yeah, whatever, you're crazy. Because a lot of times we don't listen to our friends, but we will listen to an outside voice. And then we're like, oh, wow, hey, maybe you weren't so crazy all along, because there actually are other people that think like you. But you can help make the tour possible by going to tour.fppradio.com and making a donation, because it is going to be a donation-funded tour. And if you have a little bit of money and a business, then you can wind up getting your banner on the side of the Nautilus, and it will be seen by untold millions of people as I drive across the country. So again, tour.fppradio.com. And if you don't have a business, but you have $5, that is appreciated as well. tour.fppradio.com. So back to the article here from FEE, the 5 myths that just won't die, or rather the 5 economic myths that just won't die. Myth number 1 is the idea that economic growth helps the poor in trickle-down economists doesn't actually help them. Myth number 2, free trade doesn't lead to better economic outcomes in the real world. Myth number 3, the government ended child labor, and in a free market, child labor would still exist. And we're on myth number 4 right now, that countries like Sweden and Denmark prove that high taxes don't harm economic growth. According to recent research published by the European Central Bank that used the annual data from 1965 to 2007 for 26 economies, quote, the effect of an increase in taxes on real GDP per capita is negative and persistent. An increase in the total tax rate, measured as the total tax ratio to GDP, by 1% of GDP has a long-run effect on real GDP per capita of negative 0.5% to negative 1%, end quote. Again, that is research from the European Central Bank. Numerous other studies on government size and economic growth have come to the same conclusion. Furthermore, a study of the macroeconomic effects of Danish taxation found Danish taxation generates an overall efficiency loss corresponding to a 12% reduction in total income. It is possible to reap 4/5 of the potential efficiency gain by going from a high-tax Scandinavian system to a level taxation in line with low OECD countries such as the United States of America. Now let's go to myth number 5, and there's a little bit more in the article there on myth number 4, but let's go to myth number 5. Capitalism isn't economically superior to socialism. Now, I don't think I've ever actually heard this one. I have heard people blame capitalism for a lot of ills, and I'm not really sure how FEE defines capitalism, but the way most people define capitalism is the economic system that exists in the U.S., because that's what we're told as children. And depending on if you think that Marx was right in defining capitalism as a regulated economy in which the means of production are privately held, then it could be argued that the U.S. has a capitalist economy. If you argue or believe that capitalism means free market, then no, the U.S. doesn't have a capitalist economy. Unfortunately, I don't have time to get into the reasons that they have written in the article here on that, but I would say that free markets there's no doubt that they're superior to socialism. So find the show, fppradio.com, AMA, Wednesday.